Boys, oh boys, I never seen nothing like that before. Is you telling me the truth? Ha 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 ha. Let's not get ahead of myself again. You see, growing up in a small community round the bay in Newfoundland has its goods and its bads. The good thing is that you ain't got the hustle and bustle of all the traffic. And you can do pretty much whatever you want, and no one cares or bothers you. You knows what I means, don't you? 'Tis where you can go in by the pond every night for a flick and stoop down to pick up a few old blues. Even though the most of them might look white, we says they're still green. Ha ha! Or for a rock at an old crow sitting on the tree without having to keep an eye out, in case someone's looking. You knows, 'tis the place to be. Ha ha ha! Round the bay, where things are chummies and bagbugs are machines. For example, hand me the chummy over there, 'cause I needs to adjust the handbrake on this new machine I got. Ha ha! Round the bay, I loves it, I do. It all began back when I was around 18 or 19 years old. Finished school and wanted to get away from the plant, 'cause all they tells me is that the fishery was shutting down. So where do I end up? In St. John's. Where else? That's where it all happens, they says. Gotta move to the big city and get a good job. So off I goes, to explore a place in which I knew nothing about. I mean, we'd only go to St. John's once a year, and that was to get new school clothes before we went back to school. The big city. Gonna stay in there with me aunt and uncle till I finds a job. So mother and father drops me off, and here I was. What a spot! Cars going left and trucks going right. People peddling their bikes up and down the middle of the road, moving with the traffic. I says to myself, not sure if I likes this. No trouble to be killed around here. Anyways, with the help of a few people, the aunt and uncle knew, I ends up with a job. Wasn't a big job, but 'twas enough to get me on my feet. I ended up being a helper on one of those big old boom trucks they call them, going around slugging gyprock and everything else that had to be slugged. I didn't mind a bit of work, nothing to that. I used to slug stakes for miles when father built that fence one year, and stand up alongside of it and wheel back whatever was in me, and I slinged them all over my shoulder and I'd nail it. Sure, I must have drove 1,000 stakes that year. First week on the job, there we was, me and the driver Bill. Older feller who talked right proper, he did. Where we going, Bill? I asks. We had to deliver this load down to the east end of town. Good enough, says I. I didn't know where that was. Here we is, driving along. Boy, some day for a shit in the woods, I says. Some day out what? Says Bill. Some day outdoors, boy, I says. Ha ha ha. He looked at me and nodded. Suppose he never did anything like that before. Here we was, driving along. I had my arms slung out the window, taking in the sights. We was turning right, then we was turning left. I says to Bill, Bill, how come you don't use your blinkers all the time? Blinker? Bill says. Yes, boy, the blinker. There when you makes dim turns. Jeez, I even had to explain that to him, what a blinker was. Where you long to, Bill? What? He asks. I said, where's you from? I says. Where do I live? He asks. Yes, boy. Well, my wife and I moved here a couple of weeks ago from Toronto. We have a family here, and we love Newfoundland, so we decided to move here. How come you driving around slugging stuff all day? You seem to be the type to be in the office or something. He told me he worked in an office all of his life. But he loved doing stuff with his hands, so he wanted to try something different. And that this was his first week on the job too. I says to myself, each to their own, I suppose. There we was, all up to this big old shack. What a dandy spot. Whoever owns this must be rich. We jumps out, undoes the straps on the truck, and gets ready to start slugging. Bill gets in the front, and I grabs hold of the back of the gyprock, and off we goes. An hour or two passes by, I suppose. By this time, Bill was starting to sweat. I started to slow down a bit. Being an old fellow like he was, I didn't want to kill him. Then, out of nowhere, I hears this bloody big roar. I stops, looks around. Bill asks, "What's wrong?" I says, "Look at the big bloody plane over there. My God, look, it's coming. Lord jeez, Bill, that's some friggin' low to the ground. I think it's going to crash. Get down." Bill starts to laugh. "Ha ha," Bill says to me. He said, "That plane was about to land at the airport just up the road a bit further." Boys, oh boys, I never seen nothing like that before. Is you telling me the truth? I never seen a plane that low before. You see, by the time the plane leaves the airport and gets out our way, it's about 90,000 feet up. Ha ha, what a fright I got. Back at it we goes. Spends another hour or so at it and then we're done. Heads back to the shop. We loads up the truck for the morning and that's it for the day. Poor old Bill. I knows he's not beat to a snot. After a while, working with Bill, we kind of got to know each other a bit. He could finally understand me, and I could understand him. The two of us stayed on that truck for, I'd say, a good 4 or 5 years, till one day the poor old bugger had a heart attack. Everything was fine with him, though. Had a few blockages, but he had all that replaced. Brand new, he says. Can tie up his boots now, he said, with even huffing and puffing. Ha! He finished work then, retired. I took over his job as the driver. The boss gave me a helper. Young feller he was. About 20 years old, I suppose, if that. He's not the same as Bill, though. Always on his phone, typing, chatting, taking selfies of himself all the time. "Come on, selfie," he used to say. Or jumping, I had no time for that. Ha ha. Well, there you have it. My story of moving to the big city in search of work. I could ramble on for days, I suppose, about this, but I won't. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed today's story. Until next time, I'm Corey Reynolds. Good night.